Okay, welcome everybody. We're going to give everybody a minute or two to jump online and join us before we begin. So y'all hang out and get you a glass of water, and we will start in just another minute or two. All right, good afternoon, everybody. We are here for the Artificial Intelligence AI Products and Services Request for Offer for DIR CPO TMP 441. So if you are here in attendance for that pre-bid, you are in the right spot. Next slide. So just a couple of housekeeping items for you today. We've got everyone muted. So if you have any questions, we would ask that you submit any and all questions through the Q&A box. That's how we will be receiving questions. And those are the only questions we will be answering. So if you submit any through the chat, we will not be answering those. So go ahead and submit all of your questions through the Q&A box. We will answer those towards the end. And then if I could get y'all to raise your hands, just so I know you're there and hearing everything that I just said. Great, wonderful, thank you. Perfect, everybody. We can go to the next slide and I will turn it over to Pete.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pete Cassells. I'm a procurement lead for DIR. I've been with DIR for about 2 years, and I came to DIR from the comptroller's office. Stephanie Harrison is my manager, and she's a manager of statewide procurements, a team of about 5 procurement leads. Our boss is Colleen Berkeley, who's the director of procurement services. At the top there in the middle is Lynn Hottie, who just spoke with you, and she's the director of hub outreach and training. And Teresa Williamson, to her right, works with her as a hub coordinator. In the center lower slide is Elizabeth Cooper, is the program director at statewide EIR accessibility. And we also have a special guest here today, Mr. John Hoffman, who is the Chief Technology Officer and Deputy State Chief Information Officer. Many of you know John today, and he wanted to provide some opening comments, and I will turn it over to John.
Thanks, Pete. So thank you all so much for attending today and your interest in the AI procurement. At DIR, our role is to support the different entities, public sector entities, and enabling technology. And we see artificial intelligence and the different components specified in the procurement as really an enabling suite for the future of public sector and government. We certainly have put a lot of attention in artificial intelligence in the last several years in our state strategic plan, through different training and exercises that we've done, and analytics and data management and things there. We have initiated a artificial intelligence center of excellence, which is essentially a mechanism for agencies and their individuals to really immerse themselves in understanding artificial intelligence and the opportunities. We look at this procurement as a enabling device and to go forward. And so please keep in mind, government sector as a whole is working diligently in their modernization. The legislature has approved a substantial amount in the recent budgets to move things forward and to drive this. We've got all kinds of different federal funding enablements that may also provide support and drive the use of these different contracts. So I feel very optimistic that these are going to be a suite of go-to procurements for not only state agencies, but higher education as well as municipalities. So thank you all so much again for your interest in what you do. We look forward to seeing your responses and working with you in the future. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, John. And I appreciate your comments and also the input from you and your staff and in helping our procurement group to develop the scope of this particular RFO. So today, here's a high-level view of what we'll be going through today. We'll talk about the RFO. We'll provide an overview of it, as well as the specific contents. We'll talk about the scope in some detail. Also, some important elements of the RFO, like the evaluation criteria, term of contract, schedule. I'll turn it over to Lynn later on, and she'll provide some details on the HSP. And then I'll pick up and talk about the pricing sheets and forms that you'll need to complete in those requirements. And then also we have Elizabeth here who will talk about the accessibility requirements that are involved. After that, I will turn it over to Stephanie Harrison, my manager, who will talk about some general information that you'll need to submit your offer, including the BidStamp Vendor Information System Portal, or VIS. BidStamp and VIS are same thing, so it's one and the same. And then she'll also talk about the very basic mandatory submission requirements, after which we'll go into a short 5-minute break. When we come out of the break, we'll take your questions and we'll do our best to answer those questions. Those responses, and including any answers that we couldn't get to, we'll post an addendum on ESBD with all the official responses. After that, we'll close out this pre-bid conference. I'll let you start to enjoy your weekend. Next slide, please. So overview of this particular RFO, it's artificial intelligence, products and services. And it is for the state of Texas acting through DIR. Do note that this is not for DIR directly. So this is for the DIR customers. And we are providing those contractual vehicles that you can interact with the DIR customers for their procurement needs. We'll talk more about the DIR customers in a few slides later on. This is a new RFO, so it's not a rebid, and it is, as John had mentioned, to support DIR's AI Center of Excellence that many of you are probably familiar with now. We do plan to make multiple awards from this RFO. There's no set number, that's to be determined. I think the number of final awards will probably be determined by the number of responses we get, and also the quality of those responses. And later on, we'll talk about the evaluation criteria and the awards that will result from this solicitation. Next slide, please. So here's a view of the DIR Cooperative Contract Program, or the DIR customers, and specifically the historical spend. This is the past fiscal years. Our fiscal year goes through August 31st, starts September 1st. So we haven't finished up the 2021 fiscal year, but we do anticipate a 20% increase. If you look at what we have here as far as the numbers are concerned, you look at 2018, we had 1.8 billion. That is billion with a B. In 2019, we had over $2 billion worth of spend going through these contracts. And in 2020, which has completed, over $2.5 billion. On the graph to the right, you will see how those sales relate for the last fiscal year by channel. So you can note that higher ed and K through 12, they make a considerable amount of spend through this program. And by seeing state agencies and local government, they also make the other half of the spend of this through this program. The smallest piece of that pie there, the out-of-state customers, 60 million is still a pretty good amount, but it's worth noting that that's also the highest growth. We're seeing that really kind of take off in the last year or two, as apparently they appreciate all the work we're doing from them as in establishing, this competition and contracts, making those available to out-of-state customers as well. Next slide, please. So here's still a high-level view of the RFO and its particular contents. We'll talk more in detail on all these things later on, but this is sort of that high-level view. You have the RFO itself, the main document that has all the information you need to become a successful respondent, and all the various requirements and things that you should or shouldn't do. Also, as part of the RFO package, we have 10 exhibits A through J, and we'll talk about these in detail later today through the next slides. But we'll basically, some of these exhibits are mandatory, some are not. There are some are as applicable, and we'll kind of give you the information on which ones that you absolutely need to have as part of your submission requirements, and then we'll talk about those that how they apply to your submission requirement or not. Also, as part of this RFO, there are 3 attachments. These 3 attachments are sample documents primarily. They have a sample of the contract that you can view. That will likely be as a result, hopefully as a result of your efforts. And standard terms and conditions that would apply that you would need to agree to or take exception to. And also that 3rd attachment is a service agreement template. This is a template that is an optional template, and it would be something that you could use as you work out the details with the DIR customers for those who are providing services. Next slide, please. All right, let's talk about the RFO. Next slide, please. This is taking a little closer look at the RFO. So what's in the main document? We address the vendor information system portal that you'll use to submit your offer. We talk about details on the scope of this RFO. So it's important that your products and services that you're offering are within the scope of this RFO. We'll talk about some pricing and details on how to submit your pricing, the various elements that we're looking for in regards to your pricing, which forms you need to submit, and whether it's through uploading as an Excel spreadsheet or entering your discount levels in the BidStamp system. We'll talk about some details on that later on. But also we have some submission requirements that are all outlined in the RFO, that main body of the RFO. And the RFO talks about how we plan to evaluate your responses. We'll talk about the negotiations. That main RFO document also talks about details on the issuing awards. These are 4 exhibits that are at the lower end of the slide that are really, really important and really can affect the evaluation of your RFO, so they were a worthy mention here. But we'll talk in detail on those later on today. The next slide, please. So I guess something we can talk about as far as the term of the contract, which is in section 2.7 of the main body of the RFO, the initial term would be 2 years. So the start date of the contract will be when the last person signs the contract, and that's DIR. So when when DIR signs the contract, that is the start date of your award. And then the initial term is 2 years. We also have a 2-year renewal period followed by 1-year renewal period, which are renewed automatically unless one of the parties decides not to renew. Next slide, please. Here's a close look at the anticipated schedule. So July 29th is when we publish the RFO to the ESBD. And I assume that's how you found us here today. Here we are today is August 20th, 2 p.m. is when this is our pre-bid conference that we're at right now. Our next important date is September 10th. That's what the deadline is for you to submit your questions. We will try to we collect all these questions, we review them, we formulate responses, then we have formal review process of which we bring in subject matter experts or legal team depending on what the question is, and we post official responses to these questions as an addendum on the ESBD. The most important deadline there is highlighted in yellow, which it is September 28th, 2021, and do note 2 p.m. So at 2:01, we will no longer be able to accept your response. The BIS system or BidStamp is an electronic system. At 2:01, the submit button will disappear. You just will not have the opportunity to submit the button. To click that button. So it's very important that you prepare for that. We are dealing with computer systems, so there's the opportunity for glitches to happen. I strongly recommend that you submit your response at least a day ahead of time, 24 hours at least, and prepare for that. It does happen where someone has spent weeks on their proposal and they're trying to upload it, yet are getting system errors, and then they are unable to submit it, and we unfortunately cannot accept their response after that time. So don't let that happen to you. I guess it's inevitable that happens. I know I've been in the grant writing, proposal writing business before. I know we all work like up to the last minute, want to make our proposal the best we possibly can. With all the given time, but do note, I strongly do recommend you submit at least a day before. Immediately after the due date, and when we collect all those responses, we will start our administrative review, making sure that all the required documents are there, checking the financial review and so forth. We'll talk about that in a few slides, but after the administrative review, there'll be the evaluation of the responses, and then those who move forward from the evaluation will move into negotiations. If negotiations are successful, then we'll move to contract formation. That's going to take some time, so it's a long process, and especially depending on how many responses we receive. But that's a general outline of what the process looks like. Next slide, please. So the evaluation criteria is outlined in section 4.1 and 4.2. 4.1 talks about incomplete response packets that will be rejected. So again, pay heed to those mandatory submission requirements. Make your own checklist, use our checklist, but if it's a mandatory document, it absolutely has to be there or we cannot consider your response. There are certain reviews in that administrative review process where it's pass-fail. So it's either go or you will not be going forward. And so the financial review is a pass-fail. If you do not pass the financial review, you will not be moving forward to evaluation process. Same thing with the HSP. So do pay attention to when Lynn speaks with you later today. Pay a lot of attention and follow all those guidance and requirements that she will mention, because if you do not pass that review, you will not be moving on to the evaluation process. Let's see. So RFO section 4.2.2, the evaluation criteria in the state of Texas, pricing gets the most consideration. So that has the largest number here, 40%. As far as the remainder of your total score, the contract marketing and support plan will make up 30%, and the history and experience will make up the remaining 30%. Next slide, please. So here is a close look at 3 very important exhibits that we will be using to evaluate your responses. Exhibit A is the vendor information form, and it must be filled out in the entirety. And I also want to strongly point out that it must be signed and by an officer or agent empowered to contractually bind your company. If it is not signed, we are unable to consider it. So it's like writing a check and sending it off to the electric company. If you don't sign your check, there's nothing that they can do with it. Well, that's exactly the same thing with your offer. There is no offer if there is no signature. So we cannot consider it, and it will not be moving forward to evaluations. You may be submitting as a Word document. You may submit your Exhibit A as a PDF, but please do, before you upload that document, double check that it has that signature in it. Also, we have here Exhibit B, which is that vendor history and experience. This is where you have that opportunity to really brag about, the company and all the things that it has done in the field of AI products and services, all those relationships that you have fostered through the years with public entities, whether they're K through 12 or higher education or any particular county or city or generally a DIR customer-like entity. So this is your opportunity to make a good impression or great impression on the evaluator. And we saw, or in that earlier slide, this is going to be 30%. So certainly it's important to spend the time to really provide as much details as possible. Also, we have here is Exhibit C, which is your contract marketing and support plan. Note that DIR will not specifically go out and market your contract for you. So we leave that really to the individual vendors to go out and promote their contracts and what they're offering. Make that, going out and educating the DIR customer what they can do for them. That is really we depend on you to do that. So the success of this particular contract or resulting contract from this solicitation depends on you. And so this is where you want to spend that time to really kind of flesh out how are you going to reach out to the DIR customers and make this a successful endeavor for you. All right, let's go to, well, actually, and so before we move on, I just wanted to also add, it is very important that on these 2 exhibits, Exhibit B and C, that you do not leave any questions unanswered. If you leave a question unanswered, the evaluators are forced to give you a 0. When you probably know when you start inserting zeros into an average, it really will be devastating to your score. So if you're saying, well, we don't really do that, well, just be sure to provide something that this is something that you're thinking about, or whatever. Just don't leave it blank. That's my big advice here. Let's move to the next slide, please. All right, the scope of AI. So I got to say, it was a challenge to say the least, as far as developing a scope for AI. It's been around for a while, but no one knows how it's really going to look in the next few years. I guess we can say we can sort of outline what we know right now for today. And I think for us, AI is an umbrella term. It's a term used as an umbrella for a wide range of technology and methods. We've broken that down into 5 domains here. So machine learning, RPA, natural language processing, computer vision, digital assistants. Those are the kind of products and services we see as being under that AI umbrella. And we'll kind of touch on each of those domains, and I'll provide, a description of each domain as well as some examples later on. But, the real intent behind all this, it's not about the technology, right? It's about the DIR customers. It's about the public entities. And really what we're really trying to do here is increase in productivity and efficiency. That's ultimately sort of the goals that we are trying to, that's the mission here. And it's really important to I can't really stress enough that we have a very special interest in those vendors who can provide a comprehensive approach. We want to see vendors who can support customers through the entire life cycle of an AI solution. That's going from design to development to deployment, and then to continue in monitoring of that solution. So there's a great report that recently came out, I think it was just a couple of months ago. The United States Government Accountability Office, which is GAO, they have an accountability framework on how AI solutions relate to federal agencies and other entities, basically public sector, right? So it's really a good read. It's really sort of something I think that is important and that should relate to your understanding of what our ambitions are here. As in the public sector, there are going to be high expectations that there's a sensitivity to the laws and various regulations, and we're looking for transparency and human supervision of the AI solutions. It's going to be important that there will be a documentation that can be made available for auditors and third-party assessors. So that's something we really wanted to stress. We know there's a lot of technology involved in methods, but it's really those underlying important things that we really wanted to impress upon those. And that's sort of what is going to be important when you're working with state agencies and these other public entities. Next slide, please. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So here again, this is just some parts of the overview, and I just want to say all of this information is within the RFO itself. I just copy paste all of this from the RFO. I'm not going to read all of this for you. I just do want to point out letter G, that respondents are encouraged to bid on any or all or any combination of the categories listed below. Responses may include one or more products of the services outlined in the RFO's scope section. So if you just want to, take your company or is able to provide one thing or some combination of those services or products, that's fine. We're interested in seeing an offer from you. Next slide, please. Artificial intelligence. So this is that overview, that umbrella term, and if the human brain is one of the more complicated things in this universe, then an AI solution trying to mimic it is going to equally be so. So you're going to have many technologies involved. It could be databases, software applications, APIs, cloud services. There can be, sort of a myriad of technologies that are being deployed for a particular solutions. And that's kind of how we see, AI. And then here we have just some examples of those AI solutions. Next slide, please. So this is that first domain that we talked about, first of 5 domains. Machine learning. So machine learning, I think the learning word plays a very key a key term in artificial intelligence. And here in the example section, we have of those methods or technologies that are used in machine learning, whether it's model building, development, validation, training, testing. That's part of the services and products that we're interested in this particular domain. Also, algorithm development, whether it's supervised, unsupervised, or semi-supervised. Next slide, please. RPA, so that's been around. Again, mainly just taking the repetitive tasks that people in agencies or office workers are doing and transferring that over to a computer that can just do it automatically without that human actions. And below we have the examples. Next slide, please. Natural language processing. So basically the computer's ability to process and analyze human language. So this could be text and voice translation or transcription or OCR, or we have some more advanced NLP examples there, being automatic summarization, sentiment analysis, so voice recording analysis would be the more advanced and emerging technologies in this domain. Next slide, please. Computer vision, basically the computer's ability to identify and process information, whether those are still images, video, 3D images, just basically any kind of digital images. And below are examples of computer vision currently. Thank you. Digital assistants. So digital assistants, they basically are able to respond to commands or questions via text or speech. And then we have those examples of digital assistants that are available currently. Next slide, please. So I often get a question about Texas Government Code 2254. Chapter 2254 is basically, it prohibits us putting professional or consulting, certain professional or consulting services on a multi-award schedule contract, of which this is. So I provided a link to the statute if you want to see it directly, but I thought I'd provide you with some comments today on it. I just want to say that please consider and provide enough detail on those labor line items that you'll be entering into your pricing index. So if it's, if the primary focus of a person is just to advise, you have a fantastic Ivy League grad who, has a very impressive MBA, and but there's no other description involved in what he plans to produce, or that person plans to produce, then that's maybe a problem under this particular government code, and we may not be able to put that on the contract, after looking into the details. But if, for example, if you have a person who is able to provide analysis of an AI solution, say a governance, a governance roadmap or framework, then that's something that would be eligible. So I just would encourage you to make sure that you provide enough detail within those, if you are providing services, provide enough detail of really what that person plans to do and how they plan to contribute. If it's purely just to advise, then that may be an issue. If there's something that they're able to produce specifically, then probably not, as long as it's well within scope. Okay, next slide, please. Again, I kind of like to add on this one as far as how it relates to the scope. When we're in the scope section, it's an important issue, and I think that the question arises quite often. So I'll read it again. Vendors are encouraged to bid on any or all or any combination of the products or product categories listed above in their proposals, or and also services. So, all right, well, next slide. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Lynn, and she'll talk about your hub subcontracting plan, or HSP.
Thanks, Pete. Next slide, please. Okay, everybody pay attention. All respondents must submit a completed hub subcontracting plans. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. You all must complete one and submit that in your response. Next slide. Okay, so we've provided TAC rule here just in case you're unsure. We're not making it up. You are required to submit that. It is a pass-fail item, like Pete said previously. So if you fail to complete it, if it's completed incorrectly, or you have completed the wrong good faith effort method, your HSP could not pass and be failed. And in that case, your response will not even be reviewed. You will not be considered, and you will miss this bid opportunity. So next slide, please. There are 3 different ways in which you can complete the hub subcontracting plan. And this is exactly what it says. This is if you are going to subcontract. So if you're going to subcontract, the hub goal for this RFO is 21.1%. So if you're going to subcontract and you're going to use all hubs or hub subcontractors and meet that 21.1% hub goal, then you will complete Method A, Attachment A. So that means you're going to complete Section 1, 2, 4, and then Method A, Attachment A. So you're going to identify what areas you're going to subcontract out, how much you're going to subcontract with your hub subcontractors, and then you're going to provide in Section A2 your list of subcontractors, their names, their VID numbers. They should be hub certified, so you'll check those boxes. And then you're going to provide that approximate dollar amount and percentage of the contract that you're going to spend with those vendors. Now, we understand that these contracts are based on your sales, and we know those are not guaranteed, but y'all are going to be submitting a marketing plan. You have sales goals built in, so you're going to apply those, take into consideration the life of this contract, and then guesstimate that dollar amount for those subcontractors and that percentage for those subcontractors on this plan. Now, keep in mind, once you're awarded a contract, or if you're awarded a contract, you can amend that HSP at any time. So you can add subcontractors or remove those should you need to. But that is for Method A, Attachment A, if you're meeting that hub goal of 21.1%. Next slide. So if you're going to be subcontracting and not meeting the hub goal of 21.1%, you will complete Method B, Attachment B. And that means you will be required to solicit a minimum of 3 hub certified vendors and 2 minority trade organizations. And you have to allow them up to 7 working days, or at least 7 working days, to respond back to you prior to the due date of this RFO. So if you don't allow them enough time, that could cause your HSP to fail as well. So in this instance, you're going to complete Section 1, 2, 4, and then Method B, Attachment B. And again, you will solicit 3 hubs and 2 minority trade organizations. You will document the day in which you solicited these vendors and minority trade organizations, and you will maintain that documentation on how you solicited them. So if you sent them emails, you will maintain copies of those. You can attach those to your hub subcontracting plan so we have proof of you reaching out to them. Or you will hang on to that, and if we ask for proof of that, you will be required to submit that. In failure to do so would cause your HSP to fail as well. Next slide. If you are not going to subcontract any of the work, but you are going to self-perform with your company's own resources, staff, all of your company's own availability of resources that you have, you can do so. And in that instance, you would complete sections 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in section 3, you would provide your self-performing justification. So in there, you're going to describe how you can provide your services with your company's own staff and resources, and you will give us a detailed description there. Please do not reference your response or anywhere within your response on how you plan to self-fulfill or self-perform this contract, because we do not receive a copy of that. So you will provide that justification for that in section 3. In this section, please do not make any promises that should you be awarded a contract, you will look into subcontracting. Please do not make any statements that you support minority or women-owned businesses. That is great, but that is not what we are looking for in section 3. That simply is the place in which you will tell us how you will self-perform and self-fulfill this contract. Next slide. Now, you can ask questions to our hub office, to myself, on how to complete this form. We allow a courtesy review of your HSP. That means we will look at your HSP prior to the submission date, and we will provide you a complimentary review and tell you, yes, you have completed it correctly, or no, you have not, and these are the areas you need to take care of. We are asking that you contact us no later than 10 days prior to the due date of this RFO. So we have time to review this, and you have time to make any corrections should you need to do so. So you have my contact information in the DIR hub email box, contact information there. So we can review that and let you know that you have completed it correctly, or no, there's some errors that you need to correct. Please utilize this if you're unsure. We have offered this to every single one of our RFOs prior to this one, and there are vendors who take us up on it, and there are those who do not, and there are those that wish they had. So use us if you need to. That contact information is there for you to use. Next slide. Okay, turn it back over to Pete.
All right, thank you, Lynn. So I'm back here to talk about Exhibit E, which is the itemized price sheet, and also the BidStamp VIS price form. So these are two different things. One is an Excel spreadsheet, and one is a form within the BidStamp program or portal. So the itemized pricing sheet, which is that Excel spreadsheet, you'll find 4 tabs. Tab 1 is going to be the instructions tab. Tab 2 is where you'll be able to enter in your product information per SKU. So all those products that you would like to offer the DIR customers, we would like to see an itemized list of each one of those things. And tab 3 are going to be the various services that you'll like to offer to the DIR customers. And should you wish to provide volume discounts, then we have a tab for that as well. So I would want to stress that there are 2 pricing forms. There's the Excel document that you would upload to the BidStamp VIS system, and if you're providing products, you'll also be entering those discounts, those percentage discounts, in the BidStamp VIS price form, independently of what you have in the independently of the Excel spreadsheet. So you'll both upload the Excel spreadsheet and also enter in the information required in the BidStamp VIS price form. One feature of the Excel itemized price list is that we have a place for you to upload your VPATs and ACRs. So if those are applicable, if they're COTS products with user interfaces, and there should be a ACR associated with those products, you'll be able to provide your accessibility documentation by embedding those files within the Excel spreadsheet. And there are instructions available within the RFO on how to do this. it's actually in the instructions tab of the Excel spreadsheet, actually. Next slide, please. This is just a closer look as far as the Excel spreadsheet or the itemized pricing sheet, as far as the elements that make up your pricing information for products. And so we're looking for a brand name, a category or subcategory as needed. We'd like to see a functional product description. Tell us what it does. And a part number is important because we'll be doing a cost avoidance exercise based on that part number. You can provide either the MSRP or list price, but you'll enter in that information, and then you would enter in the discount, the percentage discount being offered for that brand and product. The Excel spreadsheet will automatically calculate the DIR customer price for you, and that calculation is provided below. And so there'll be a formula within the spreadsheet, so please do not delete or manipulate that. And it will calculate that final DIR customer price below. You'll see that administrative fee, that 0.75 is the administrative fee. So that's really baked into the DIR customer's price after you provide your prices and discounts. So it's really the DIR customer who is covering the administrative fee for the use of this contract. Next slide, please. So tab 3, which is the services tab on the itemized price sheet. These are the list of elements that we're looking for you to provide: the name of the service, a good description of the service, also the cost and unit of measure. Typically for services, what we see is labor or a description of what the person does, and then a labor rate of by hour. So, you know, it's X dollars per hour, and then you have the various calculations being done to get to the DIR customer price. Next slide, please. Just a few quick words about the contract for product and services and standard terms and conditions. Next slide, please. So please know there are certain terms in the terms and conditions that we do not take exceptions to. They are outlined in statute, and if you cannot live with those terms and conditions, then you're not eligible for a contract with the state. So there are certain exceptions that there are certain things that we just cannot consider. And also, please know if excessive amount of exceptions are taken to our contract, we may just decide not to go into negotiations or cease to negotiate altogether because it's seen that your company has a significant amount of issues with what the terms and conditions would be. If you do have any exceptions, please provide them in Exhibit A. You'll have a table in question 12 where you can enter in your exceptions as necessary. Next slide, please. All right, at this point, I would like to turn it over to Elizabeth Cooper, who is the Director of Technology Planning, Policy, and Governance, and she'll provide you some information on Exhibits G, H, and I.
Hello there. I'm Elizabeth Cooper, and the statewide Electronic and Information Resources Accessibility Program falls into my area of responsibility. And you may hear me refer to it as EIR accessibility as I cover Exhibits G, H, and I. And also you'll hear me refer to Section 13 of Exhibit A in the vendor information form. Next slide, please. So let's start with a little bit of background. The Texas Government Code requires that state agencies and publicly funded institutions of higher education, it requires them to comply with EIR accessibility standards. And so the purpose is for the public and state employees to be able to have access to government information and services, regardless of their ability or disability. The requirements are further defined in the Texas Administrative Code. and they conform to the World Wide Web Consortium 2.0 AA technical standards. So when DIR customers that are state agencies or institutions of higher education go to purchase products off of DIR contracts, they will be looking for accessible products because they have to comply with accessibility standards, and they will be asking you for accessibility documentation. There are some provisions for them to get an exception if there are no products available that are accessible, but that's on them. What they're going to be asking you for, and what DIR asks you for, is to provide credible documentation related to accessibility. Next slide, please. And so there are 3 different types of accessibility documentation that we ask for depending on what products or services you're offering. The first is accessibility conformance reports, which are created using voluntary product accessibility templates, or VPATs. And they're required for all commercial off-the-shelf offerings, including software as a service. There's another form, we call it the Vendor Accessibility Information Request, and this is required for all non-COTS development services, web, application development, etc. And then the third is required for all submissions, and this is the policy-driven adoption of accessibility. It's a self-assessment tool that we ask you to complete so that you can gauge your organization's maturity level related to accessibility. I'll go into a little more detail on each one. Next slide, please. So let's start with the VPAT, which is used to create an accessibility conformance report. The VPAT template is provided with the solicitation. The accessibility conformance report must be created using VPAT 2.3 unless it's a product that hasn't had an update or a new release since January of 2019. So there may be an existing VPAT for those older products. If they haven't been updated, it's okay to have an accessibility conformance report that was created with an older VPAT template. But do be sure to check that there haven't been updates to those products, and you will include the VPATs in the price sheets. Now, DIR highly recommends that you look at this sooner rather than later and begin sending reference documents out so that you can meet the deadline. If you're a reseller, get the VPATs from the manufacturer. They may be on the manufacturer's website, but you also might need to reach out to the manufacturer, and you can log the status of the VPATs right there in that column in the price sheet, as Pete mentioned. If you are the manufacturer, you should have current complete VPATs by someone who understands the product, and the VPAT should be completed based on testing. If a VPAT is not applicable to the product or services, use that status column in the price sheet to let us know. And then there you will see in Exhibit A, Section 13, there's a place for confirming that a VPAT is not applicable for any product or service that you might be offering. So be sure and look at all of that documentation sooner rather than later, so you'll know what you need to be providing. Next slide, please. And so the Vendor Accessibility Development Services Information Request, or VADSIR, is for any non-COT offering. Those are listed on this slide. It includes, website, web applications, integrated solutions, etc. And so what we're looking for in this document is credible documentation of a description of your accessibility activities, any training, tools, corrective actions that you might have, alternate methods, which might be like a call-in line for assistance, and links to website with examples or an accessible website example. And like the VPAT, if the VADSIR is not applicable to your offering, look at that section 13 in Exhibit A and confirm it's not applicable. Next slide, please. And the final piece is policy-driven adoption for accessibility. This is a self-assessment, and we require all vendors to complete the self-assessment. It's an indicator to the extent to which your organization has implemented accessibility best practices within your operations. And so it asks you questions like, do you have an accessibility policy and plans to implement it? Do you have governance systems? Are you developing them? Are you integrating accessibility into key business processes? The self-assessment generates a maturity score, and it can help your organization kind of identify where you are in terms of implementing accessibility best practices and give you a roadmap for improving. Now, what we're looking for is a complete, credible PDAA. So you're going to want someone who's familiar with the policies in your organization to help complete it. If your organization doesn't have a high level of accessibility maturity, that's okay. We know accessibility policies take time, but what we're looking for is that credible completion of the document. Give yourself an honest assessment. You can provide comments in the form and make notes about any plans that you have to improve accessibility maturity. Next slide, please. And so we do have several resources. There's links to EIR accessibility information on the DIR website. The VPAT, VADSIR templates and the PDAA templates were included with the solicitation, but there are also links to them provided in this slideshow. And there's additional information on accessibility and procurement on our website. And of course, next slide, you can reach me if you have specific questions. Be sure and keep Pete in the loop on any communications though that you may have with me.
All right, at this point, I think we're going to turn it over to Stephanie Harrison, who is the manager of statewide procurements, and she'll talk about some general information and how to submit your bid.
Afternoon, everyone. Next slide, please. We're going to go over at a high level, just some general RFO information, point out a few things, and then how do you submit your proposal? So as far as the RFO, whenever you're asking questions, please reference the RFO page number in the section when you're submitting questions. That helps us to pinpoint and give you a more accurate answer to your question. Any webinar participant may submit questions electronically at any time through the webinar using the Q&A tab. The questions that are popping up in the chat, most of those just seem to be you guys exchanging information with each other. That's fine. Those will not be official questions that are pulled over into the formal Q&A document, nor will they be addressed during the time of this webinar. Questions answered today are unofficial until they're posted to the ESBD in the form of an addendum. Please check the Electronic State Business Daily often for updates. Your deadline for submitting questions to this RFO is September 28th at 2 p.m. Central Time. Those questions will be submitted through the BidStamp Vendor Information System portal, which I will explain to you how to do that in just a few slides.
And actually, Stephanie, let me just make a correction on that. It's actually going to be September 10th, as I believe it's 5 p.m., but it's in the official schedule. So that should be September 10th for submitting questions. Yep.
September 28th, that's the deadline for the whole RFO, correct?
Right, that's correct.
Okay. So we'll have that update on the slides before the slides go out as a part of an addendum. Next slide, please. So general information about your offer. Disqualification of offers. Please, please, please pay attention to this section. Failure to sign the vendor information form, your Exhibit A, is an automatic disqualification. We get asked a lot whether electronic signatures are accepted. Yes, but be aware that not all electronic signatures are the same, meaning that some electronic signatures are not compatible with particular formats. And when you upload those documents as signatures, especially if you're using a web-based platform, you upload that document. On our end, when we download the document, the signature is not there. So you want to, if you're using electronic signature, make sure that you're using a signature platform that is compatible with the downloaded document and not just a web version of that document. Otherwise, when it comes across on our end, it'll look like your signature is not there and you will be disqualified. Same thing for the hub subcontracting form. If it's not signed, it's not accepted. So make sure your signature's on those forms. If you need to scan it, print it out, sign it, and then upload it, that's great. You know, you have a solid ink signature there. Failure to complete the financial information, the DUNS number, could possibly disqualify your offer. Failure to complete, submit the hub subcontracting plan. Lynn stated earlier that is a requirement for everybody, regardless of your own individual entity's hub status. Failure to submit on or before the due date and time. This is time specific as well as date specific. Our system does not allow submissions after the time has passed, even though you may be still good for the date. If it's past 2 o'clock Central Time, your submission will not come through. This last one on this disqualification of offers is very important and will disqualify you from the entire process, and that is contact with DIR employees regarding this RFO other than the designated contacts for this RFO. Your designated contacts are Pete Cassels, and then you may contact our hub department for hub questions on this only, and then you may contact Elizabeth with Pete CC'd on that communication for any questions about your accessibility documentation. Outside of that, you may not contact, discuss, shoot a quick email, phone call to anybody within DIR regarding this particular RFO solicitation. And we're very solid on that. So please don't have us completely disqualify you from the process because you are seeking additional information outside of going to Pete on that. For safe bets, I would funnel all your questions through Pete, and then Pete can assist in getting the information to you that's needed. Even if you're requesting for a hub review, he can get that over to the hub department. But please, please, please do not violate this this issue here that of contacting people within DIR about this RFO. If you have a current DIR contract, you are allowed to obviously still do business on that contract, and that includes contacting your contract manager or anybody for reporting that you have on a current contract, but anything to do with this RFO needs to go through Pete Cassels. Delivery of offer. Any vendor responding to this RFO must submit the response through BidStamp VIS, and we'll call those, it's the same system. You may see it as VIS, and then I may refer to it as BidStamp, but it's the same system. Next slide, please. Again, this is a reiteration of the no talking to anybody within DIR other than the designated contact. Next slide, please. And again, here are your designated contacts for this. Pete Cassels is your primary contact for pretty much everything related to this RFO. If you're having system issues with the BidStamp portal, you may contact myself, Stephanie Harrison, or Pete, and we will get the proper people to address that situation. And then your hub subcontracting plan contact is the hub office, and their email is located on this slide. Next slide, please. Bid submittal. Any vendor responding to this RFO must use the BidStamp Vendor Information System portal. In order to access the portal and the functionality, you must create a login and account for your for your agency through BidStamp. This presentation will not walk you through how to do that. There is an actually completely separate recorded webinar that is posted on the DIR website under the Information for Vendors tab. If you scroll towards the bottom of the page, there is a YouTube tutorial pre-recorded video, and there's also a handbook and a guide on how to set up your BidStamp account. Please allow for several days turnaround time for the approval on that. It's not an automatic approval. There's a manual approval on the back end where your BidStamp account is approved. So again, this is part of that planning. You want to get your account set up immediately if you plan on submitting to this. And it does take about a 2 business day, not days, 2 business day turnaround time to get that account validated and set up, especially when there's a lot of vendors trying to set up their accounts all at the same time. Watch the video, look at the guide, go through and set up your account. I will show you how to actually enter your submission through that. If you have a current account with BidStamp with the VIS portal, it's the same account. You would just go log in and look for the RFO, and you can start looking through the RFO information there. If you have not, you will need to set up that account. Next slide, please. Any person with a disability who seeks an accommodation under the American Disabilities Act for responding to the solicitation may contact the DIR at the point of contact in section 3.1 of the solicitation. Please allow at least 5 business days for response. Next slide, please. Okay, so how do we submit the response? After your account is enabled, you will be able to submit and manage the RFO responses from the BidStamp portal. Once you have your account label enabled and you're logged in, this is what you'll see. This tiles here. The top 3 are all about your vendor information system account. The bottom 3 tiles there, vendor information, about DIR, contact the DIR, are tiles that take you back out to the DIR website. Next slide, please. So to get to the solicitations, after your account is enabled, you'll click on Open Solicitations, and then it takes you to a page that looks similar to this. Any DIR solicitation that is active and open and eligible to receive submissions at that time will appear in this list. You will want to navigate to the RFO number DIR CPO TMP 441 for AI, and then you would click on that. Go to the next slide, please. You'll be taken to another page that takes you into that specific solicitation. This page here gives you information about deadlines, when the questions are due through the portal. It shows you where you can submit your questions. Down at the bottom, once your entity has submitted a question, there'll be a running log of the questions that your agency submitted. It will not be a running log of all questions that's submitted, just the ones that come from your account. And then I'll go over a few of these buttons on the next slide. Next slide, please. So a few things to point out on what your portal will look like is there is a respond to solicitation or view response. So before you submit a solicitation, the button will say respond to solicitation. Once you've started entering information into solicitation, it will change to view to response. The view response button allows you to resume your progress on any existing RFO response. The Ask a Question button will submit questions to be reviewed and considered as a part of the Q&A document. That Ask a Question button will be active up until the question time and deadline, and then after that, questions will not be able to submit through the portal. Subscribe to solicitation allows you to basically follow the progress of the solicitation and get the addendum notifications by email to those users who are on that account. You must select subscribe to solicitation button and have enabled your account to receive notifications in order to get those automatic notifications. These very detailed instructions are actually in the other webinar that is posted online, so it'll walk you through this process again. The view solicitation documents navigate you to the ESBD the Electronic State Business Daily posting for the solicitation, where you can view the documents. The Electronic State Business Daily is the official placeholder for where all of the documents to an RFO will be posted and any addendum documents, and please check that frequently. Next slide, please. Okay, this slide here, I apologize for all the information crammed on there, but you all will receive a copy of these later on. This is kind of your cheat sheet, so to speak, for your slide, for your proposal response. A lot of people would print this slide out and will have it to their side so they can remember what all these instructions are for. So your RFO response, this is an RFO response page. These buttons here are very, very important. Please note that the delete button as an actual kill switch, it deletes everything that you've submitted for that response. So any information that's been entered into the portal, once you hit delete, it's going to ask you a time, you know, are you sure you want to delete this? Is going to delete your entire response. But then if you click OK to that, you're starting over to clean slate. So make sure that you really wanted to delete that entire response before you actually hit the delete button. Once a response is submitted, the vendor must use a withdraw button. The delete button will change to withdraw, and then you actually have to withdraw your response. So this is equivalent to back whenever we would have people bring binders and notebooks and stuff up to the office and drop them off. If you decided for whatever reason that you did not want your response to be considered, you would come and pick up that binder or notebook, and we no longer have it. Same thing with withdrawal. Once you withdraw it, we no longer have it electronically. It's not there for us to see. So be sure, very sure, before you enable the delete or the withdraw button, and that's what you want to do, because both of those are going to require you to start over. Submits the response record and all associated information. Once you submit, it's sitting there waiting for the solicitation to close. P cannot go in there and verify like what documents you've submitted. We actually can't see what you've submitted as far as the actual documents themselves until the solicitation closes. So it's up to you all to make sure that you have everything in your list per the RFO that's required before you hit submit. If you're not sure, don't submit it. You would do the you're able to come back and add to information, but once you submit it, in order to get that information back, you got to start all over. So you're going to have to withdraw it and start to upload again. The submit is saying that you're ready for DIR to review everything that you've turned in. Ask a question button does just that. It submits a question to the point of contact for consideration for including in the Q&A document. The create a pricing form. And so this is part of your submission process. If you're submitting products, not services, if you're submitting products, you are required to submit your pricing through the pricing form and with your bid package 2. Services are going to be on the bid package 2 only. So let me say that again. If you're submitting services, that is a bid package 2 spreadsheet. If you're submitting product, that is VIS, create a pricing form and bid package 2. If you're submitting services and product, that is the VIS portal and bid package 2. You will always submit a bid package 2. If you're submitting a product, you will also submit information through the vendor portal. So the new RFO response document, that's where you're actually going to upload your documents in that are required for the ESBD posting. So if your Exhibit A, your Exhibit B, your Exhibit C, your Hub Subcontracting plan, your bid package 2 pricing list, all of those are required documents that will go into the upload process. If you have any additional attachments, those will also go through the upload process, as well as any addendums that are required to have signature. Those will go through the upload process. Your vendor references will come directly from the customers to the point of contact in the RFO per the instructions in the vendor reference form. You will not be uploading your vendor references into the VIS portal. Those will come separately directly from the vendor to DIR. There is a button in here that allows you to send your vendor reference form from VIS by email to the emails that you list in there. It doesn't let you know if the customer got it. So if you want to be sure that your customer received your vendor reference form to send in on your behalf, you can also download that form from the ESBD and send it directly to them as an attachment in the email. This is just an easy way to send it here. But again, you're not going to know if they got it. And we don't know if they got it or not. It's just a click and send to the email that is listed in your VIS. Okay, next slide, please. Pete, am I still covering this, or do you want to jump in?
I'll let you just handle that last slide if you want.
Okay.
And we'll go to break.
Your mandatory submission requirements, please refer to section 3.1.7 of the RFO. Respondents must provide these items below or your response will be considered non-responsive. Again, the Exhibit A is your vendor information form that must be signed by an individual that has the authority to bind your agency to the proposal and to a contract that could possibly be awarded by DIR. Exhibit A, if you have any canceled contracts, that attachment must be filled out and submitted. Exhibit B is your vendor history and experience form. Exhibit C is your contract marketing and support plan. Both of those forms are evaluated. Please answer every question in those forms. Exhibit D, your hub subcontracting plan must be completed and signed by every entity that is submitting a response. Your product and service pricing, again, the products and service pricing, everybody will submit a bid package too. If you are submitting product pricing along with any of your other pricing, you will also enter it into the vendor portal. The vendor service or listing agreements, if you licensing agreements, if you have any of those that are applicable, your EDGAR certification form, which is an attachment in the RFO, and any addendum requirements. And please check the ESBD for any of those. Vendors do not necessarily receive separate notifications that we've posted an addendum. So it is up to you all to go in and check for those notifications and check pretty frequently before the closing date. Next slide, please. Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break and then we will come back and go over some of the questions that you all have submitted through the Q&A portal through the webinar. And then we will wrap up and end this pre-bid conference. So what time is it? 3:17. So come back at 3:23.
That'll work.
Sounds good. Okay, it's yeah, it's 3:23. I think we'll just come back and start with the Q&A. Lynn, would you like to start reading off the questions, and we'll try to answer them as they came in.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a reminder for those of you who have posted any kind of comments or chats in the chat box, we will not be addressing any of those. First question. As a service provider, we do not manufacture any SW. We have certifications and references with many software providers' products, but do not wish to sell software products. Is it possible to submit a compliant bid in this case?
Yeah, so if you do not wish to sell any software products through this solicitation, that is fine. This is the scope of this particular RFO is for both products and services. So I take it and you're probably looking to provide services only, and that is fine.
Okay. Are you looking for respondents to, one, define model building development? As an example, with definitions of complexity, model types, data collection and data preparation work needed, etc., and then arrive at a base price that is then provided to you, or to provide rates per hour for different skill sets at different levels of experience, since these solutions will not have fixed, universally understood definitions?
Thanks for that question, Heather. It's a good question. I really think that number 2 applies. So as far as what the specific mission or solution that's needed for the customer is going to define that. So I think if you're a company that it really provides services, I think as far as development services and building those models, or whether you're doing validation or testing or training, and then you'll want to provide what the fee is per hour in the services tab and outline it that way.
Okay. We would like to understand your definition of a service. For example, you describe key solutions for machine learning as follows. 2.1.3 machine learning. Machine learning is a process that uses rules and procedures to provide advanced statistical analysis or prediction without having to apply explicit instructions. Machine learning uses data sets streamed into models to describe recommended or forecast trends and patterns. Examples of machine learning solutions covered by this RFO include, but are not limited to.
Okay, so in general, if you have services, it's really for any of those kinds of examples that we provided, that you have services to either train, support, develop, or anything that it involves those particular examples in the machine learning area. So if you provide any services regarding that, those standalone services that provide any of those kind of functions, then you will want to outline that in terms of personnel and labor rates.
Okay. What percentage of cooperative contracts historical sales can be related to AI services?
There are none. This is a new RFO.
Okay. Will these slides be available after the webinar?
Yes. We'll post it on ESPD as an addendum. We'll provide both a list of the attendees as well as the slides.
Okay. Will you release answers to questions on a daily basis, or will you release them all at once?
Somewhere in between. I think we want to do is do rolling addendum. So I think the best we can probably do is, my goal is to release them on a weekly basis. So that's what my aim is.
Okay. What are requirements for financial reviews?
We need your DUNS number. Our financial review is based on the Duns and Bradstreet report.
Is there any limit on number of pages for history and experience section?
I don't think so. It's definitely, I don't believe our program has a specific page limits for the exhibits B and C. Is that correct?
No, we don't have specific page limits, but you want to make sure that you cover the information that is requested in there. A lot of times what we see is we get these big proposal packages that are more of a agency-wide marketing package, but the questions that we actually ask are not addressed. And so you're still scoring lower on than your peers who are submitting the actual answers to the questions.
Okay. There is no question in the information template where we can talk about products and services. Where should we provide content on products and services?
So that's correct. The Exhibit A, which is the respondent information, is really just the key vitals regarding your company, the company name, the legal name, and the key contacts and some other certifications, as well as the authorized signatory's signature. But it's really going to be in both Exhibit B and C, where you can provide details on the nature of what your products and services are.
Okay. Exhibit B. Is there a page limit for this requirement? In previous RFOs, there have been restrictions.
And I think we have answered that one.
Okay. Kindly let us know, where do we showcase our AI experience and capabilities? It seems like attachment B doesn't have a space for capabilities.
Both B and C, you'll need to work it into those those questions there. And if you take a close look, I think in both B and C does have some questions that will allow you to expound upon your abilities.
Okay. Is the expectation that all responses include solutions to all 6 areas defined under AI?
So no, as far as what you want to offer, it can be any combination or any one or any combination of those things that we provided as far as the 5 domains.
Okay. Understand section 2.1.1. However, will our company not be considered as much if our core revolves around NLP and digital assistant versus RPA?
No, we have a special interest in those that have a comprehensive approach. So certainly, I just wanted to let the vendor community know that what we have a special interest in is that comprehensive approach. But of course, if you don't have if you don't deal with some things and some of the domains, that's fine. Please, we would like to see an offer from you as well.
Okay. Is a labor rate card acceptable for services pricing?
The pricing is up to you, and that will ultimately be between you and the customer.
Is there any legacy data regarding the current uses of AI, machine learning, RPA, NLP, and CV?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's question is clear at this time. We'll need to get back to you on that one.
Okay. Has State of Texas identified some of the AI projects, use cases that need to be addressed in near future?
Not specifically as far as in terms of this RFO. I think that's probably something that our AI Center of Excellence may have some good insight on.
Okay. What happens if your AI solutions, i.e. software, do not require any subcontractors?
That's fine. You may be a prime without subcontractors, and there's no penalty for that.
Can we change or modify hub contractors and conditions during the term of the contract?
I'll let you answer that, Lynn.
Yeah. Yes, you can modify your hub subcontracting plan at any time once you're awarded a contract. Please, okay.
Ignored.
That. Yeah. I know DIR won't promote to specific customer agencies, but based on these areas that y'all came up with, AI, machine learning, RPA, NLP, CV, do you have example agencies who have expressed interest in these areas?
And so basically from my standpoint within the procurement service division, I am creating the contract vehicles for the various DIR customers to use. And they'll have the ones with the specific needs. And I think you'll probably be able to do your research as far as if there are any other specific needs outside of this particular endeavor.
Regarding RFO 2.3, page 10, emerging technologies, DIR reserves the right to consider the addition of services to support emerging technology, such as next generation enhancements and upgrades for products or services that are within the scope of DIR CPO TMP 441. Successful respondent may propose such service categories throughout the term of the contract. What is the process for proposing added services to support emerging technology and enhancements, upgrades to this DIR contract after award?
You know, I could probably take a stab at this question, but I think Stephanie would probably be a better person to speak on this. Stephanie, would you like to talk on that one? Regarding emerging technology clause?
So emerging technology means that technology that did not exist at the time the RFO was released. So it's a very specific type of technology, and we understand that new technology comes into play all the time. So if that technology did not exist at the time the RFO was released, and it falls within the scope of this RFO, then if it's something that your company feels like would be a value and you could offer to the DIR customers, once a contract is awarded, you may speak with the contract manager who's assigned to that, and they will assess that on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
Thank you.
Should services be limited to the products we list in the products sheet?
So the scope of this particular RFO covers both products and related services, as well as standalone services. So if you have services that are related to your products, those are considered related services, such as installation, maintenance, training. You know, those are related services. But you may also have, we included in the scope of this RFO standalone services as well.
Where do we put information about price increases over the life of this?
So the way DIR contracts work is that we're really tying you to the discount level. And if there are pricing increases or you need to add SKUs, that can be done after post-award working with your contract manager.
Okay. Do you require products to be FedRAMP certified?
And I think that relates to cloud services. So all regulations and laws would need to be followed as applicable.
Which state agencies are actively looking at implementing AI solutions?
And I think we answered this question before.
Can the price be provided as a range?
No, price should be specific.
Will you accept additional attachments that describe our products and services?
Please provide your all the information within the included forms.
Can we bid as a prime and also as subs under the other primes?
Well, I don't know if you would be submitting a bid as a sub, so you're welcome to be a sub on another person's contract, but you would be bidding as a prime. We're issuing contracts to the prime.
Sology Solutions is a systems integrator, and we read this RFO as lending itself more to the non-COTS, as AI is an enabler and not necessarily a product. How can we best propose our systems integration abilities in bringing elements of the integrated solutions from different players in our ecosystem and integrating and delivering a full solution that addresses the desired outcome as stated by your client?
So again, this RFO is for both products and related services, as well as standalone services, and you can include in your proposal any combination of those things. So if you have some products and you also have some solutions, or you just have one or the other, that's fine. You're eligible to submit that as part of your offer.
Could you please clarify the criteria for evaluation for the accessibility items?
Elizabeth, would you like to address that if you're still here?
Yes, I am still here. Let's do that at a later date in writing.
Yeah, we can take a further look at that, and we'll include a response to that in an addendum as part of the addendum posted to ESPD.
Okay. I gather you need companies that can provide a specific product ML, RPA, NLP, CV, et cetera. Is that correct?
So there is no specific thing that we are looking to purchase. Again, we are making the contractual availables, these $0 contracts available for DIR customers to use. Basically, though, you need to be within the scope of those things that we've mentioned in detail today.
Do you accept digital signature in lieu of actual ink signature?
Yes, we do.
Is there a way to test or confirm that DIR can see an electronic signature?
So, you know, if we first don't see a signature, we're going to do everything to possibly find that in the document. And so we will, you know, download that on our, you know, on our desktop and try to find a signature on a document if we don't immediately see it. So basically, you know, if it's something that, you know, you can see on your desktop, then we're generally should be looking at the same thing. But I do strongly recommend you just want to make sure that that there is a signature there, whether it's you're providing a Word electronic document or a PDF, or whether you want to scan it. I think Stephanie had a good advice or guidance previously. Probably the safest thing is to provide a wet, you know, signature there and scan it, or, you know, provide a scanned copy. So that's probably the safest.
Could we submit a different document for executive summary?
Yes.
Are there any page limitations on our experience and capabilities description in Exhibit B?
And I think we've covered that.
Do you have to be a Texas-based company to submit a proposal?
No.
I have a bid stamp. Did you see vendors now, or do you see them only when RFO is submitted by vendor?
We'll see you in the system, and we'll see you may have, you know, certain documents in there, but we don't have access to them or anything like that. You know, even after it's really sort of after a certain point in the reviews where we'll have access to them, you know, after the evaluation and so forth. So we'll see you. We'll be able to see whether or not you're in the system, but we don't have access to your particular documents.
If I email to my references, will the reference responses be listed in VIS as they are received by DIR?
No, we will not be able to provide you any information on whether or not, you know, a particular reference was received. The recommendation is that, you know, you ask them to CC you. That was probably the best advice I can provide you as to ensure that your references was sent and received by us.
How many vendor references should be submitted?
3.
Can DIR clarify if they have a list of services that can be filled in the Exhibit E itemized pricing sheet, tab 3 services?
Can DIR clarify if they have a list of services that can be filled? It's based on what your company provides. So please just include, if as long as it's within scope. I realize that we're asking you to sort of shoehorn your business model, your company, you know, descriptions as far as labor rates into our template. But just do the best you can on that. But we don't have we don't prescribe or any specific line items. It is based on your company really, and up to you.
Okay. For a category, if we mention the service to be provided as implementation, how do we provide the rate for it? Please clarify.
So for those people, if you provide AI implementation, and that's the category for the services that you provide. Then you would just list out the name of the various people that are involved, whether it's a senior implementation director, and then provide a description of what they do in the correct field, and then provide their rate, and typically it's by hour. So that's how you would do that. And if there's a junior implementation specialist, then continue on until you have all those people within that category described in that tab.
Which services are requested in this RFO? AI, machine learning, RPA, NLP, computer vision, digital assistant, qualify for VADSIR in the eyes of the DIR?
So you want to look at sort of where the VADSIR applies, and I think I'll leave this question, and we'll provide you a detailed response in the addendum on that one.
Exhibit E, itemized pricing sheet, tab 3, services, seems more suitable for product, not service. Can DIR clarify if it is a mistake or not? If not, can you provide a sample of how to fill it out?
No, tab 3 services should be for services, and I believe there is actually a sample there. So it's in a sample is provided as the first row in that, as far as what we're looking for in the services tab. If you need additional information on that, please contact me directly, as far as if you still can't manage to or if it's not clear as far as how you need to list your services in that tab. I'll be glad to further explain or walk you through that.
We are a services provider firm. Can DIR clarify if we qualify for this contract?
Services only is within the scope of this RFO, and just being sure that what the services that you're providing are within what we've outlined in the scope of this in the scope section.
Can DIR clarify the difference between a commodity contract and a professional services contract?
So commodity, and hopefully you're not referring to professional services under 2254. Do note that professional services under 2254 are outside the scope of this particular RFO. Professional service that relate directly to AI development or technology development, as listed in the scope section as RFO, are within scope. Commodities would be considered software products or hardware products, but we're really focused on the software products.
Thank you.
And let's see, how many do we have left?
We have 23 questions left.
Okay. I think we'll take a few more, and then I think we may have to wrap this up, but let's go ahead and go through a few more then.
Okay. In 7.14 of the standard terms and conditions, please elaborate as to what is required in the report the DIR expects, specifically in terms of the pricing and services from alternative sources.
Yeah, I think we'll cover that question in an addendum.
Okay. Since DIR has a lot of other cooperative contracts such as DBITS and ITSAC, can you clarify if we have access to the existing documentation of the incumbents for this contract?
There are no incumbents under this RFO. It is a new RFO.
What products, if any, are currently underway that would normally be considered under this contract?
Again, that is up to the DIR customer, and these are $0 contracts that are vehicles used by the DIR customers, and the mission or procurements that will be made through those contracts is dependent upon the DIR customer.
Okay. Will you be? Yes, we will be providing a list of these. Is our request for offer for AI products and services, including operationalizing data models, or is it looking for algorithms in their specific domain outside of RPA?
Yeah, and let's go ahead and kind of take that as the last question. And so I'll just go ahead and say that, you know, and we will answer the rest of the questions through the formal process of going through these and providing responses to all these questions that you all have had today through an official addendum. For that last question, again, it is up to the DIR customer as far as what the specific ask is going to be or interest is going to be. Basically, what you're providing is sort of a menu of what those services that you can provide to the DIR customer. And that's what we're trying to capture in that itemized price list. And through this exercise, we're trying to capture all those things that you would like to offer to the DIR customer, and whether it be products or products and related services or standalone services, we would like to, I encourage you to offer everything that you are interested in providing to the DIR customer, and then the customer will ultimately decide by looking at your contract and the particular contract documents of that outline everything that you're able to provide them, and then you'll work out the details as far as further negotiations with the DIR customers on those things based on what the need of the customer is. But I think we'll go. It's 10 minutes to 4, and I don't want to start going into people's weekend time. So. I just want to thank all the speakers. Thanks to Desiree for working the slides for us today. And thank you all for your interest in this opportunity. I look forward to working with you further and to your responses. But General, have a great weekend, and thank you very much.